Welcome to Automating Cognitive Services with PowerShell session. My name is Alexander Nikolic. I'm Azure and PowerShell trainer. I'm also Microsoft Azure MVP and Cloud Data Center Management MVP. I'm one of the founders of PowerShellMagazine.com, a site that I'm running with a couple of other MVPs. And you can find me on Twitter as Alexander. So today we'll be talk briefly about Azure Cognitive Services in a kind of a theory, and then we'll move to lots of demos for it. So what are the Azure Cognitive Services? It's a set of APIs, SDKs, and services that Microsoft created to enable developers to create intelligent apps. But I was thinking, like, why should just developers have all the fun, right? Why, if you are a PowerShell scripter, not try to do something? And the good thing here is that with the cognitive services, you don't need to be the expert for data analysis or to artificial intelligence. You don't need to have those skills. So the goal of cognitive services is to create applications that can see, hear, speak, understand, and even have some kind of beginning to reason, right? That's kind of in preview, but we will see how that will go later. So when we talk about cognitive services, there are a couple of different ones. So we have a catalog of services that can be somewhat organized in 5 pillars. So we have a vision, speech, language, web search, and decision. So all of those pillars contain different capabilities. So for example, for vision, you can do some face recognition, computer vision, you can have an ink recognizer. With the speech, we have a speech services, so we can translate text to speech. With language, we can translate to different languages. For example, do some test analytics of the things. With a web search, we can do interact with a Bing search or with a Bing image search. So when people thinking like, why would I even want to interact with a Bing? I'm not building another search engine, but you can look at it as the Bing has the access to amazing database of data. You can use their API to interact with all that through Bing and get that information that you need, really, right? So that's just amazing capabilities for that. You can use a Bill spell check to check your text is correctly written. So for decision, we have anomaly detector, content moderator. Those things are still in preview. I will not demo any of those, but they exist. So people usually ask, like, cognitive services, can I even try them to see how they work before I paid for them? And there is a way to do that. So you can actually get a free trial for most of the services, even without having any kind of account. You just go to Azure website, you give them email address without any other information, and you get 7 days of trial so that you can check those services are working for you or not, and interact with them. Then you can have a free Azure account that will give you in 1 year a way to play with some of those services, because most of them have a free tier. And the best way is actually when you have the existing Azure account, then you can use it, and then you can decide to try it first for free and then later move to paid tiers for it. So how we start working with it? And it doesn't matter what kind of a language you pick to interact, you need to go through those steps somehow. And usually when you look at the documentation for cognitive services, you will see that Microsoft is using the real programming languages to that, and they provide some examples for it. But if you search for examples how to work with PowerShell and cognitive services, you're out of luck for now. They don't have that still documented, right? So I tried to kind of fill in the gap and to kind of show you some of the steps. So the first one that you need to do is you need to create a cognitive service resource, or as it's called in a PowerShell, a cognitive service account. To do that, you have two different ways. You can create a multi-service resource. It's called Cognitive Services. That gives you access to multiple services, and that way you will have access to all of them and through the single API key and the endpoint. Then it will also consolidate your billing cost for it. But the thing is that if you want to try it for free, then you can go with a single service, and then for every service you will have a specific endpoint and specific API, but then you will have access to a free tier that you can try. And this is usually how people start working with it, especially when they experiment at the beginning. A couple of commandlets are here on a slide to show you how you can kind of start discovering what's possible. So one of the things that we need to do is to first find out what are the types of services that we can use, right? Then what are the SKUs that we can use in different regions? And after that, you need to create it. I will show you that all in a demo. So the most important thing is when you have the API, when you have the endpoint, then you need to use them to authenticate to your application. When I say application here, in our means that when we work with the PowerShell, actually to authenticate our scripts, okay? So authentication part is probably the hardest part of working with cognitive services, because once when you have it created, when you authenticate, then it kind of depends on the services, what you're doing with them, how you will get the results from them and interact with them. But authentication part can be a little bit tricky. So every request to cognitive service needs to contain the authentication header. And we can authenticate in 4 different ways. If you are using a single service, then you can authenticate with a single service subscription key, or with a multiple service subscription key if you created that cognitive service multi-service account, or you can use a token or Azure Active Directory authentication for it. So the name of the key is on a slide. It's an OCP APIM subscription key, and it's kind of, I don't know why it's called that way, but this is what you need to know, and this is what you need to have in your headers when you create a request. So this is what you use for both single and multiple service accounts. So let me show you in a demo how all that works. I will present a couple of different demos. So first we will investigate what is possible to do with a PowerShell. Azure PowerShell team created a module called AZ Cognitive Services that gives you a couple of commandlets that you can create the account, investigate what are the types and the SKUs that are available to you, define the networking rule if you need to, and after that, it's on you to use with a invoke REST method or invoke web request to interact with the services. After that, we will go through the demos of using a Bing search to through PowerShell and big image search. Then I will show you how to translate some text to a different language, and then we will convert a text to a speech, okay? So let's try first to see what we can do with the cognitive service module. Cognitive services module, right? So if I run this, let me show it this way. You can see that a couple of things are possible. So we have a full coverage of working with a service account. We can get information about the one that it's already created. We can create a new, remove one, or update it. We can get information about the key directly here. We have kind of 2 suggestions here. You can use this commandlet to get the API key, or you can actually store the API key in Azure Key Vault and then use that to read, right? So recommendation is to use the Azure Key Vault, but for testing purposes and stuff, it's enough to kind of read it this way, right? Don't try to expose it, especially during presentation, because after that, you will need to regenerate. You always get 2 keys, so if you need to regenerate one of them, you can still continue to use the second one, okay? So just be aware of that. So, what is available to us as different types that we can use? So, as you can see here, we have a support for a bunch of them, and the one that I mentioned, so it's not, let me rerun it. So the one called, I'm missing it, right? Cognitive Services. Cognitive Services is the one that will give you that multi-service access, but all the others are specific for the certain service that you will use. And you will use this information with the new AZ Cognitive Services account. As one of the parameters is called type that you need to use there. So here, once when you decide that you will work with one of those services, in this case it's a Bing Search version 7, then you can specify location and then look at what are the tiers that are exposed to you, like what are the names of those tiers. You don't know it unless you tried it already. Sorry. So if I run this, there are some warnings about the changes that will happen, and then you get a list of tiers that you can use. For some reason, the Visual Studio Code right now is behaving badly for me and cutting stuff. So this F1 and in certain services F0 are the free tiers. All the others are the ones that you are paying for, okay? To get information about how much they cost, you need to go to pricing for cognitive services, and then to see what are the capabilities that you will get and how much you will pay for it, okay? So to work with a Bing search and a Bing image search, I pre-created a resource group and a cognitive service account, but I will show you what are the steps. So first I defined here a resource group, created that resource group, and then created a service specifying a resource group name, a location, which is global because this service is globally available, define the name, a type, and then a SKU. So here I will not use the free one, I will use the S1, okay? So that usually it's created very, very quickly. So once when you have it, let me click here to clear. Once when you have it, let me see what is exposed. And you have some properties exposed. One of them is the endpoint that you will need. So after that, you just need to find out a key, okay? So here I will assign the value to endpoint variable and then find the key. So for a key, we have get AZ Cognitive Services account key commandlet, but you need to pass the value, pipe the value at the end to select object expand property key, because you are not interested in the object that contains property key, you are interested only in value, okay? So that's why we have this select object expand property key, okay? So now we have a key, and our query will be Microsoft Ignite, okay? So let me try that. Now that we have that, we actually need to perform the web search, okay? So for the web search, we use invoke REST method and pass the URI and the headers in the API. And after that, we can get that results and find the name of it, display URI, and if you work with the Visual Studio Code, you can actually click on it and it will open a page so you can look at it. With image search, we define the endpoint, the API key again. The query will be PowerShell logo. And then I will define parameters that I will pass to my invoke web request using a hash table, so it's kind of a little bit cleaner than the first case. I will pass the parameters and run invoke request and store the result to a variable called result. Once when I have that, I can kind of look at the get member and I will realize what kind of it. Looking at the properties that are exposed. Let me see. Sorry. And the content looks pretty strong here. So as a candidate, so the content is returning a JSON string. So I will now convert that from a JSON and select the property called value that contains some information like a content URI. So if I do that, as a result, I will get 5 URIs, and if I click on some of them, like this one, you will see that the My PowerShell Magazine logo is very often treated as an official PowerShell logo. So of those 5 results, actually 3 of them are returning PowerShell Magazine logo, but anyway, that's something that happens in a browser and happens in a PowerShell as well, right? No difference there. So for text translation, it's kind of an interesting thing that you need to have translation API URI. And once you have that, you define the languages from and to that you will use, and there is a list. I will share all these scripts with you later, so you will see all that. So I'm translating from English to Serbian. I need to define the headers as well, and I'm using here a new technique that you can learn when I create an empty hash table and then I add keys. Create a conversion URI. And then I define some text. So this text has been converted from English to Serbian using Azure Cognitive Services. That's the original one. Once when I prepare that text to be a JSON string, I can pass it as a proper value to invoke REST method. And if everything it looks like I missed something here. That's unfortunate. Okay, so at the end you will get the text translated. So I will output the original and the translated text. But let me move to another demo about text to speech. So with that one, I created again a speech services. And for that one, I need, again, to create the token URI, API key, read from the stuff. And then I will use here a media player to actually play the generated speech for you. Define the output file. And after that, we need to go through this token headers to define all that, targeting the URI. Once when we have all that, we can actually pick the output format. So here's a list of all the supported ones. We need to pass that as part of the headers. And we also have support for the different voices that we can use. So I have here also the URI. Once when I have all that pieces, I need to create the XML snippet that I will pass to the service. And I will inject in that XML snippet a text called "Welcome to Microsoft Ignite, enjoy the show." So you can see that here it's all done. And now when I have all that prepared, I can run invoke REST method with the method post, passing the URI, headers, voice, and defining the content type, and the output file where the generated speech will be stored. So when it's done, I can here run this whole block when I will wait a little for the file to be generated, then to be opened and then played. So if the audio for my computer is enabled, you will hear.
Enjoy the show.
Have you heard it? Yeah. So let's try one more time.
Welcome to Microsoft Ignite. Enjoy the show.
Right, pretty cool, right? So this is like a short example of the things that you can do with a PowerShell and the power of cognitive services. There's much more to explore, turn those things into functions. So thank you for your time and enjoy the show.